remember a heart left cold. I walk a lonely road until I find forgiveness. Do you remember that feeling inside? Do you remember the one left behind? I'll be there by your side if I could live forever. 'Cause I wanna find forgiveness, forgiveness in your eyes. I wanna live forever, forever in your eyes. I wanna see heaven, wanna see heaven in your eyes. Do you remember the promises made? Do you remember the one who was betrayed, trying to show the way to live forever? Do you remember the trust that was made? Do you remember the tear wiped away? I'm waiting for the day that I see you in heaven. 'Cause I wanna find forgiveness, forgiveness in your eyes. I wanna live forever, forever in your eyes. I wanna see heaven, I wanna see heaven in your eyes. Do you remember the day it began? Do you remember just how far you ran, trying to save the day and live forever? Do you remember the dream you were shown? Do you remember the peace you'd known? I'll be out on my own until I find forgiveness. 'Cause I wanna find forgiveness, forgiveness in your eyes. I wanna live forever, forever in your eyes. I wanna see heaven,
Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. So I hear that there's some low audio issues. Can you hear me better now? Hopefully, it's better now. Let me know in the chat, and if I need to make some adjustments, I will do that. Okay, good. Yeah, it's just it's the playback thing, and I'll reset the studio here when I get a new computer system, hopefully. So we'll start there, I guess. Looking forward to the future. Again, thanks to everybody for joining us this morning. Sue Finelli, Trey Clark, Rose 777, Joe Ray, Ben Matlock, Kevlar, Jay Armstrong, Ted Summer, all the usual suspects are here. And again, thanks for spending your Saturday morning with me. Just a quick shout out to Ted Summer, and he let me know that there is a meetup today for those in the Pacific Northwest. If you're in the Seattle area, you can go to Burien to Seahurst Park at 3 p.m. today, and Ted will be there, and maybe some other folks to get together, and maybe I'll even sneak in. We'll see how the day develops. So that's at 3 p.m. today in Burien, Washington at Seahurst Park. You can just look that up. Okay, so yeah, the computer thing. So I mentioned previously that I've been using a borrowed laptop from the office to do these shows because without having 1,000 subscribers, I can't use my typical device, which is an iPad. That's a mobile device, and you can't do that. So I need to get some updated system. I have built several big media systems previously, and I had a couple of them, and then, as things happen, no longer have that. So I'm looking at specifying a system, and some folks said they'd be happy to help out with that. So I have been looking into different ways for people to contribute. There are a number of different ways, of course, from Patreon to PayPal, you name it, Vimeo, or Venmo, right? So I'm conflating Vimeo and Venmo. You pay to see movies, I guess. In any case, so there's a variety of different ways to do it. And everybody seemed to have their favorite or their preferred method. So what I think I'm going to do is just set up a variety of different ways. So if it's your favorite, you want to do that via either like PayPal or Patreon. I'll probably do a GoFundMe style Kickstarter thing, although it may not be GoFundMe proper, but something to that effect, as well as, again, my post office box. You can, if you want to send me something direct there. Again, I'm not big at e-begging, so that's not the intention. I'm going to certainly put my own resources into it, but in order to make it happen more quickly, if that's something that you'd like to help out with, certainly there's that. I think it's, in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $2,000 is probably what it's going to take to do a proper media system without having to upgrade anytime soon. So anyway, I'll more about that later, but that's kind of coming in the future. Also, want to mention that I've gotten a bunch of late entries for the Awakening Project, which is probably why a lot of you are here. For that, the Awakening Project, again, is a project that I began the first of this year to try to ascertain and put some actual metrics to the reason that some people become awakened and some don't. And it seems that as a per capita, it's a very low percentage. And it seemed like there's a lot of people, we talk about it, and there's a lot of attributes. We'll say, well, perhaps it's people with a more artistic bent or a more spiritual bent. Perhaps, seems like there's a lot of smokers. There's a lot of people who smoke pot, right, or have done drugs. Some artistic types, musicians, artists seem to be kind of in that thing. But I thought I'd at least try to put some metrics to it. And first, to try to ascertain if we could determine some correlating factors between those who made the process and those who didn't. And then furthermore, ultimately, the idea being if we could potentially come up with a spell break or a deprogramming script, if you will, because from all appearances, it seems like people have been programmed into a kind of cult-like philosophy and outlook. And so you've got to have that kind of intervention to make it happen. So we're going to see if we can come up with that. But the early indications have been very interesting, and that they're proof of concept. There is some definitely correlating behavioral patterns and way people process information that are definitely corollary and certainly statistically significant in that many of them, while representing a very, very small, even less than 1% in some cases of the total population, represent a very high percentage of our respondents. Also, we've gotten some late respondents, and they there's a whole bunch of different kind of category on the Myers-Briggs index. So that's a little bit different. So apparently it takes them perhaps a little bit longer to internalize it or to act on it. So really interesting stuff. And one of the most interesting things that I've seen, of course, is the stories, the personal stories of awakening that you guys have shared. And I have been really struck at just the candid, honest, really transparent nature of these stories. They're amazing, and there's so many similarities, and yet coming from every different direction. And this is what has been really remarkable to me, and one of the reasons that I had a conversation with Nachikita. We have come from almost diametrically opposed backgrounds, right? So he was a Korean orphan, was adopted into the U.S., but grew up, entirely in an atheist family, and again, we couldn't have had more different backgrounds, and yet he and I, as well as many other people, again, it seems that when you're looking honestly for truth and you follow it wherever it goes, that sooner or later you come in close proximity with those other folks who are doing the same, and that is really profoundly encouraging to me in a situation where it often seems like there's very little hope and things are so dark around us, to be able to see with such clarity people who are of such character. I don't know any other way to put it. They're the people who have formed this community, and certainly almost everyone who's in our chat right now, I have come to know personally, at least to some level. And these are the kind of people that I would want to hang out with, who are honest and open, sincere, and wide awake. And this is the kind of thing that we're hoping for, is certainly to develop a community, a larger and more connected community of folks along these lines. And that's why I'm just delighted that you guys are here and getting to know each other, and we're all getting to know one another. Some folks are even trying to see if they can, make it possible to come into community together and live together. And that's outstanding. I'm just delighted that these things are occurring. Well, as in keeping with the context of the show, we're going to take a look, try to look down the corner, around the corner, down the path a little bit. I'm not big on prognostication, as I've said before, mostly because your opportunity for error is enormous. So with all of these things, I always say I reserve the right to be completely wrong, and I expect to be. With data anemia, that is the inability to have as much data as you would like. The more data you have a better chance of understanding things. And so much of the truth, what we would call the truth, has been so well hidden or obscured or destroyed in some cases that it becomes very difficult to put it all back together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle of 10,000 pieces, where it seems that many of them are missing. Some are painted over, most of them turned upside down. It's almost on the one hand, a nightmare, and on the other hand, it becomes a lifelong effort for many of us to try to put it back together and see where are we at, and who are we, where did we come from, and what's going on here. And that is, I think, these profound questions are what all of philosophy seems to have been headed toward, and certainly science, the initial version of what science was supposed to be, and the scientific method. Again, even that's been used to sort of hoodwink us. They get a proper setting of this is scientific method is supposed to empirically prove things and show a cause and effect relationship. And when we all say, yeah, that sounds super great, then they flip the script and then say, no, we don't really use that anymore. We just observe and declare, and we know, and we come up with all these stories, and people accept it, based upon this idea that science is supposed to be objectively seeking the truth, and clearly they're not, especially when they have philosophies that they follow, and these things are okay and these things are not okay. And if you certainly, anybody who's looked into the nature of the shape of the earth and cosmology, you've bumped across Edwin Hubble and his comments about discovering that it seemed through the redshift and background radiation that we are the center of the universe. And that was so horrifying to him and so unacceptable that he did everything possible to reframe the data to make another story out of it. So it's an expanding universe, it's on the bubble, and these sort of things. And so, the shape of the earth is pimply. I'll go with that. I continue to say that I am a geometric agnostic. I don't know what it is, but I think I can falsify the current claims. And the current claims is something of a house of cards, and any item that you can disprove knocks the whole thing down. And if you can disprove it a number of different ways, well, I can say with some certainty, at least from my perspective, to my satisfaction, it simply cannot be a spinning rock of a radius of 3959, traveling on 8 different vectors at millions of more than a million miles and million six at least miles an hour, and that's not even counting the expansion of the universe would then put it over 900 million miles an hour. It's ridiculous, and so to my satisfaction, I've disproven many of these things to my satisfaction. I'm not very evangelistic in my views generally, whether it's that or whether it's my relationship with the Creator, who I call Dad. Again, I'll tell you about it, and I'm happy to describe it. And I can't tell my story really without including it because it's such a big part of it. However, again, I also believe that everybody's entitled to their own journey. In fact, that's the way it is. I have said before, and I did during the Secrets of Saturn stream last week, that it's my perspective and my observation that, for example, no one ever found God because they lost the argument. It's not really an intellectual pursuit. It's a relationship, or should be. And so to that end, again, to each their own. But it puts me in the awkward spot that certainly it has so profoundly affected and improved my life that certainly I'd want that for people I care about. But it's, again, uncomfortable and awkward for me to try to tell anybody else or be preaching anything like that. So I'm cautious about it. I don't want to alienate people. And certainly I understand those who've had very negative experiences with religion, as have I. And I don't really follow a religion. So in fact, I find it to be most unuseful and only as a tool to control people. That having been said, I certainly recognize and have a relationship with my Creator to the extent it's very personal, and it's just that, it's very personal, but it's the most effective thing and the most meaningful thing in my life, second to my, I would say even my other relationships are second to that because it's the primary thing, at least for me, right? And so that seems to be part of this whole thing. But when we come to looking for truth, and certainly we see this around us, that some people, and I was talking to Ted about this earlier, Ted Summer is in the chat, that people, it is remarkable to me to watch people who seem otherwise bright, intelligent, become so self-deluded that they willingly jump on things that cannot possibly be true. They are so self-deluded, and for a variety of reasons, right? We can identify some that seem obvious. They don't want to come into conflict with others. They don't want to be seen as somebody crazy or nutty. Sometimes ego plays into it. They don't want to admit that they've been fooled or they could have been wrong. And fear, right? Fear, because the implications of accepting that you have been lied to on such a large scale and so thoroughly is terrifying. It can be that you lose your entire worldview. Like everything you thought was real suddenly isn't. And it seems that every rabbit hole you go down turns out to be, like, the crazier it sounds, the more likely it is to be true. And that's a weird world to live in. It is like the weirdest movie or dream that suddenly is, that's the reality. And what seemed real is just an illusion. Oh, by the way, I'll note that in the background, if you hear the sounds of thunder, early in the first few shows that I did, I included some thunderstorm in the background as well as some music, and people said it was distracting to them. Hey, I understand that. So I took it out, but this is actually legit. It's actually thunderstorm here in the back. So it's not an effect I'm adding. It's just that's how it is. So anyway, it's been said, right, that the most fundamental and valuable statement in all of science, or it's been said that the beginning of wisdom is, I don't know, right? And it does seem for myself and many others that the ability to, and the humility to look at things and say, fuck, man, I don't know, right? Like that, I don't really know. That's honest to me, right? The answer of I don't know to me is far better than someone trying to bullshit me. And so this premise of when they say it's settled science, right? Whether that comes to cosmology or evolution or geology, history, right? This is settled science. It's entirely an oxymoron, right? That doesn't go together, because anybody who's done even the most elemental of scientific research, using the scientific method, of course, is that each and every question that is answered inevitably leads to 10 more increasingly difficult unanswered questions. So with every, it's buffering. Is that what's happening? That's unfortunate. I set it to really low latency in hopes that it would be a better chat experience and I could interact more quickly. I see that that's creating a problem, so I cannot change it now, but I will keep that in mind for the next stream. So my apologies if it's creating an issue. I haven't had that before. I do have a very tight upload bandwidth, as well as okay, it's fine for informally hip, no buffering for Jamtron. Okay, so I do have a really solid broadband connection. The bottleneck limitation is at the laptop, and it's ancient NIC card for wireless, so that's the bottleneck if there is one. Okay, so thanks guys for letting me know that there's no issues. I can keep that in mind for the next stream. But in any case, the point being that when you begin to look into any issues of, I would say, any scientific discipline, or even less concrete and material sciences, the more squishy philosophy, every question that becomes answered, especially again using the scientific method, if you're really using empirical evidential science, every question that you answer in terms of the cause and effect relationship leads to an order of magnitude of more profound confusion, right? So I often will put it this way: the more I know, the less I understand. I also say that the more I come to know and understand people, the more fond I am of dogs. Yeah, because man, people. It seems that however low I set the expectations, people always tend to meet them. But yes, this idea that we don't get a chance to question anything, right? That anybody who questions any of the narrative is somehow crazy, right, or deluded. I think those of us on this side, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, we realize that is a, hey, dig deeper sign, right? When they try to censor it or tell you, don't look here, we know that means dig deeper. The problem, of course, is that it's an indicator to those who are already well programmed that they can dismiss it out of hand, because that's just crazy talk, right? Conspiracy theorist. So anyway, again, I'll just start with the whole I don't know thing, right? And any attempt to peek around the corner or get a glimpse beyond the veil, I do it a lot. I quite frequently try to get a better understanding of what's happening. But I'm usually fairly reticent to openly speculate because, again, your propensity for error is enormous. And the aggregate level of data anemia, as I said, is very high because much of it has been hidden away or now censored, right, in real time. They change things on the fly, right, by moving to an entirely electronic storage media and retrieval system. So you no longer go to the library, you just look it up on Google, right? Well, they change it constantly. So Wikipedia, while it's supposed to be this great thing for instantly updated group think, if you think that's a good thing, right, now becomes the opportunity for them to just change it on the fly and, again, keep out any true information. And I've shown before how, at least over a period of time that I could confirm the IP addresses, because you can find them on changing Wikipedia articles. There's a preponderance of them that come from Langley, Virginia. Well, we know what's in Langley, Virginia, right? Alphabet agencies are nested there. They can change things. And so now we've got, Mandela effect. Is it possible that things are literally being changed, or that we just are being led into a situation where we now cannot trust our own recollection? It certainly seems as if that may be part of the effort or the intention there. Whatever the cause of it is, there's certainly some weird stuff going on. Whether I don't know how much you've looked into it, but there are some things I can definitely say appear to have changed from my perspective. And it does seem like everybody is a little bit different there. So somewhere we're creating and manifesting a reality. Is this another aspect of the limbic system, which has been shown to literally change the incoming data to match what you already believe, right? So if you see something that is outside your worldview or your core belief system, your limbic system, which is everything that comes into through your senses, goes there first, and that's part of pattern recognition. And so that's how neuroplasticity works. And where you bring things in, you compare it against what you already know and have experienced, and you sort of categorize it so you know how to take things in. And this is really kind of true across humanity, despite whatever your personality type or anything like that might be. Everyone processes that information a little bit differently, and their pattern recognition is different, but the basics hold true in how it physiologically works. The only thing that, by the way, doesn't go through the limbic system first is music. We're hardwired for it, so it goes directly into you, and then it gets split out. So that's a really fascinating thing, that we are hardwired as humans for music, and it speaks very, very deeply to us. So again, in this data anemia that we find ourselves in, and with the objective truths and the history of humanity being so well occluded, to try to take any kind of look around the corner is a difficult proposition for any single person. Certainly, the more data one knows, again, the more you can better understand the circumstances and context in which decisions are made, and of course, and the probability of outcomes, which is, again, very clearly then leads you to why the powers that ought not be are so desperate and intent upon gathering every scrap of available metadata from every available source, and increasing by far the number of point sources for that data by virtue of the Internet of Things, your refrigerator, your toaster, all sending real-time information back through these compromised switches. So they openly admit to creating real-time, incredibly complex, real-world virtual simulations, right, of every man, woman, and child in this realm. They have a model of you by many times, because there's probably 2 or 3 dozen just in terms of the alphabet agencies here, plus the Five Eyes, plus every other country that's doing it, China and Russia and whoever. Sorry. So whoever's working on these things, and then you've got the corporations and think tanks, Rand Corporation and Tavistock and those guys, each of who are doing their own. And so they create these virtual models and simulations where they can run all sorts of tests, right? So it creates they create these simulations, and again, from my perspective, they don't just have, now, according to the CIA, they say that they have upwards of a 98 and some percent accuracy rate. And now I would say if they're telling us that, it's probably well above than between 99 and 100% accuracy rate. And the only divergence are those of us who are divergent, right? Because much of what they're doing has to do with driving those decisions rather than just predicting the outcomes. And they do that, of course, with this trauma-based mind control and all the media and all the things that you guys already know. You see it. It's a cybernetic feedback loop, and this allows for very specific and very controlled situational dynamics to be tested, evaluated, you reiterate it. And so we're seeing this right now, again, with the current level of crisis management, at least in the United States, between the pandemic and race relations and protests and riots and general just unrest. What we would have previously said is the Overton window ever widening. Now it seems like it's just propped open, right? And allows unchecked governmental control. And the worst part to me is that generally with what seems to be, at least we're told, the popular consent of the majority, right? So please help us, right? And so there are some Americans now actually openly asking for a state of martial law to be declared in order to suppress the violence and civil unrest that we see, in many cities now. It's not just the one city where Floyd was, but the Twin Cities. But now in many cities, including CNN, right, in Atlanta, was vandalized last night and mocked by Trump, and so doing it. But we see this brought about I think it's pretty obvious. It's a direct and an unambiguous result of the mainstream media just fanning the flames of fear and uncertainty, and in many cases creating this uncertainty by having conflicting reports and, of course, picking sides and doing this left-right, red-blue paradigm to turn people against one another. And so whether it's the invisible threat of microscopic pathogens or just, the inherent and pervasive fear of the unknown in cultural differences, right, between subsets and segments of the population, again, whether that's race or locality, north, south, the urban, the rural, right? They just pit each other against one another, and they've been doing this for a long time. So in a rather successful effort to keep people at each other's throats to such a degree is to, allow them to move about freely and without scrutiny to continue to erode and eliminate our freedoms, right? And those freedoms that we were guaranteed, but really are pretty much all but, null and void in actual practice. And so much akin to apologies without change, vapid and empty promises are nothing but, that's a form of manipulation, really. That when you guarantee and promise certain freedoms under the Constitution, at least here again in the United States, and then each and every one of them is surreptitiously and underhandedly removed and nullified, and often without so much as a whimper, right, between case law, statute law, the reality of the day-to-day injustices within the application, at least, of these policies in society, in the courts. We don't have a justice system. We have a legal system, right? And overall, the living conditions under which we now failed to thrive as a society. And so there are very many who would insist that we still have and retain these rights and they are God-given, but without their full acknowledgement and the delivery of them in actual practice, it's worse than not having them at all, because it's a deceptive and false pretext for freedom, which is instead slavery by consent, and without which it seems that the controllers can't long operate, maybe not at all, right, if one takes into consideration the karmic precepts of revelation of the method and letting people to be deceived. So what's going to happen next? Again, fuck if I know. But it does seem, from my perspective, that it would be wise, at least, to have some sort of a plan. If things should suddenly go south or sideways in a hurry, right? I mean, which of us could have predicted 8 weeks ago, right, that we'd be here? Yeah. Where they're literally shutting down the economy. They're literally giving people what they'd promised in terms of kind of this basic living wage, using the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, and that extra $600 a week. Again, I'm talking from the perspective of the United States, but certainly we see this all over the world in terms of them locking things down, shutting down small businesses, allowing only the large corporations to exist as, quote, essential, and again, driving people out of business, especially restaurants, and then bringing back, making people really contingent and reliant upon the government. And so it seems, again, with these things in place that, again, from my perspective, and I said it before, it really wouldn't take but the flip of a switch. And certainly they've been practicing for it. They've done from my study, every single one of the Five Eyes countries has more than once and to varying degrees done what they call a dark skies event, practicing for the long-term outage of a power grid. And they do, just a few hours to a few days to up to 70 days without power. And the outcome of that, it doesn't take too long to understand that even within 72 hours, major cities would become the worst part of zombie movies. Most people these days, they can't subsist without picking up, food from the store, without a microwave. They can't even boil water, right? What are they going to do without coffee, without, the internet? I mean, again, within 10 days, the vast majority of Americans would beat each other up for a place in line at FEMA camps, if you believe in such things, just to get a hot shower and have some Wi-Fi. So they would come as the savior. They don't have to put the boot on the neck. They would be the savior, and then they just say, "Hey, we can only provide, the basic utilities and the basic services in major cities, and you have to, get your chip or whatever. We're going to surveil it tightly." And they put up a fence, and they do their. It's right there at Agenda 21, 2030, the sustainable thing, where they're going to rewild is the term they're using, all the rural areas, right, and then make it off limits. So there you go. This could be done literally with a flip of a switch. And so with things happening the way they are, again, I never want to be the turd in the punch bowl. I never want to be the guy, Chicken Little crying, "The sky is falling." Because again, I don't know. I know for sure that I don't know. But what I can say is that if it should happen, it would certainly it would have been difficult to prognosticate this where we're at now. It would be in your best interest to have a plan, a bug out plan, or whatever you want to call it, for should the unthinkable happen to such a degree that there is no power, there is nothing, and there's becomes quickly chaos. You should move quickly because within 48 hours, certainly they're going to have the military in telling you what to do. You won't have much of a choice at that point unless you're willing to fight it out in a lethal battle already at that point. So if you have someplace you can go, gas up your car, put some water in it, some food, be ready. Because in that moment, it will be very difficult to come up with a good plan if you have not already, because tension is it makes it very hard to think, and so when things are happening at a high rate of speed, it will be very difficult to make quality decisions. And so for those of you who have any thought of getting together with like-minded people and trying to hunker down or find some place to be, again, I would suggest trying to find a way to keep in touch with each other. Of course, if we lose power, that means most of our means of communication are immediately down, and certainly there won't be a post office. But if you have a place that you want to, if poop hits the fan, and you want to meet someplace, within 3 days or whatever, and plan from there, this would be a good time to do that and communicate that to people, whether it's your family, extended family, friends, whomever. Have a plan. Again, the best to have a plan and not use it, right? So again, I'm not trying to scare anybody or say that this is going to happen, but I am saying this is one scenario that doesn't require any effort. They can easily complain and explain it as a solar minimum event, electromagnetic pulse attack. It could be any number of things. They've said, they've told us numerous times that the infrastructure is weak and vulnerable. It could be a cyber attack. It could be any number of things, guys, that all they have to do is flip a switch. And with things already as tense as it is now, right? Again, it's just a matter of that's all they would have to do. So there are numbers of scenarios. There could be a financial collapse first. There could be all kinds of things. But what I am saying is that from my own and other people's perspective, we look at this and go, how far back are they going to pull from the brink before they push again? We know that the Overton window is something that they always do. They push it a little further and then they take it back and they push it a little further. So I expect it probably might come back a little bit, but it doesn't seem like by much. They do seem yeah, it's scared of people. Yeah, I'm sorry, Eric. I'm scaring people. That's boogie, boogie, boogie. But I am saying that it's best to have a plan. I'd like to put it that way, because what I've seen lately is fairly remarkable. Like, I've heard stories. I haven't actually seen it, although, again, I'm in the Pacific Northwest and in the Seattle area. And really almost since the beginning of this pandemic, there's been a lot of people wearing masks. And now the percentage of people is in the high 80s of people who are wearing masks. And the number of people who will give you harsh looks is at least 25 to 30%, where, it was very low to begin with. But what I hadn't seen is a level of fear like I saw yesterday. I was in a Home Depot in the Seattle area, and I hadn't experienced anything like this up close anyway. There was a 20-something employee, a guy, and he had a big red beard, a guy that you would expect to be on, a reality TV show for Survivor Man or something. But he had the cuck mask on, and when I approached him to ask him a question about where to find something, just the terror in his eyes that I was, encroaching on his space. And he literally, he was shaking, and his voice went up. And I couldn't see him, of course, but I could hear his lips trembling, that he was physically shaken. And I could barely understand him, of course, through his cuck mask, right? He was terrified. He was abject terror that I was coming even close to him. I was just like, what the hell? But he wasn't the only one that I saw. People, literally, as you walk near them, that they will just their eyes get big and they step around you. I was like, what the fuck, man? You guys are out of your mind. And I try to have compassion, for this, because I understand that they're programmed and they can't see it any differently. But man, can you not ask the question? It's remarkable. And so with this level of heightened, hyper awareness, hyper vigilance, people make really poor decisions. And when you have what appears to be in Minneapolis, almost 100% agents provocateurs coming in and starting the crap, and never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. What you're seeing is a powder keg, really. I don't know any other way to put it. It's just waiting to be set off. And I'd give 7-3 odds that in the next week we may see martial law declared in one of the cities with these protests when they turn into riots. I'll give 12-1 that it turns into a national thing in the U.S. Because people will ask for it. When Trump said when the looting starts, the shooting starts, right? And Twitter hid his tweet saying it glorified violence, and he's really just quoting I think it was the Florida governor from 1967. But in any case, all the Trumpsters and Q guys think, yeah, martial law, and then then all these mass arrests and Gitmo. It's like, no. We know that's not going to happen, but we're on such a precarious slope, and at this point, again, with that Overton window being pushed as far as it is, it seems unlikely that we could even get to 2025 without something occurring where they would activate a national emergency to such an extent that they would instantiate martial law. They certainly practiced for it with Jade Helm a few years ago. Again, they played the boy that cried wolf card, and mock anybody who has questions about not only its legality, because the U.S. military is not supposed to be active on U.S. soil. And there they were. Oh, it's just a training exercise. Mm-hmm. So, in any case, I would say that wherever you're at, it's a good idea just to be prepared, just to be wise, and have a plan, have an exit plan, an exit strategy. It may be next to impossible if you've got little babies, little kids, but again, it's better to have in mind what you intend to do should it happen. My intention, again, I reiterate, it's not to scare anybody or the sky is falling and martial law is coming in the next 5 minutes. Fuck, I don't know. But what I'm saying, I suppose, is that having observed these things for a long time, it's certainly gone further than we've ever seen, certainly in my lifetime. I don't think anybody could deny that we're at a place that is unprecedented in terms of open government control and, moreover, the level of indoctrination and programming from a society that is not only willing to accept but happy to have these controls. It's remarkable. And in fact, claiming that those who push back and say, no, we demand our freedoms, are troublemakers. And you don't care. You want people to die. And I've heard many people say, I'll say many, I've heard some people say, and I've seen lots of comments on those protesting and that sort of stuff. Oh, you're just mad because you can't get a haircut and get your nails done. I hope you die. Really? Like, really? You want people to die because they're standing up for your freedoms? What the fuck is that, man? I don't know. It just, these things are unsettling to me. And again, I've certainly never seen anything of this magnitude to this point. So I just say, keep your head on a swivel. Be aware. There you go. I guess that's all I need to say about that. Okay. Let's now talk a little bit about. I'll check the chat here real quick. I went kind of off on a diatribe here, and so, yeah, I hear you, Don. They throw out all this stuff about what bad people you are because you're saying no, don't take my freedom. Right. Time is flying by, Sue. That's for sure, and it seems to almost an increased pace, right? Like time itself is actually moving forward. Art Bell used to call it the quickening, and man, that was back in the 90s. So it is a remarkable place that we're at now. I mean, it's not uncommon to see, Facebook posts saying, "Hey, what chapter of Revelation are we in now?" Yeah, I know, right? Damn. All right, so let me not unnecessarily flog a mortality-challenged equine American. That's the only time you're going to hear me be politically correct is when I'm mocking it. Okay, so the Awakening Project. Let me mention a little bit about that. So I mentioned at the top of the show that we had a number of late entries. You can still get those in if you like. Unintended.consequences3@gmail.com. Again, we're just asking for your date of birth and location so we can cover the astrological stuff. A recent MBTI or Myers-Briggs personality profile test. You can take any of the free ones. 16, the number 16, personalities.com that's appropriate. There's a bunch of them out there. You don't have to pay the $50. Include the 4-letter score as well as if they provide percentages. And then if you would provide just an overview of your own awakening story from a bit of background, just a brief bit of your family history, and what first you woke you up and how it's affected your life. What I'm really looking for is the way you describe it, what you choose to prioritize, because we make memories by the way that they emotionally impact us. We don't really make a memory of things that don't carry emotional weight to us. So I'm able to use some of that context to get a better understanding of how you're processing the information and what things are important to you. So, and some people chose to record it instead of write it out. That's perfect. I love that. In the coming weeks, I've asked a few people and some that to be a guest here on unintended consequences, so that you can get a sense of some of the different awakening stories and how we all kind of come to a very kind of the same zip code. Right, starting in very different places, and so it seems as though we're getting close to the truth, at least to a viewpoint that is very similar from very different directions, and also to let you know that you're not alone. And you're not alone. You may feel like it. You may be very isolated amongst your friends and family and coworkers. The number by percentage of per capita is very small yet. My estimation is less than even 1%. It would take 3.5% for us to cause real revolution. That's the number that's made for the that's been anticipated as a tipping point to topple a government. Is 3.5% of the population. So I mean, it's eminently doable. It's possible, but right now, from the numbers that I look at it, the Western world, certainly Western Europe, the UK, the United States, Canada, even Mexico, parts of Latin America, we seem to be less than 1%. It's a little bit higher in South America, from what I can tell, but still not much over 1.5% there. But while it is growing and many more people are waking up, certainly, again, you are not alone. We're just far flung, most of us. And so if you have a significant other or close people in your life, your family who are awake or awakening up, congratulations. Good for you. It's so much easier. At least those who love and understand you enough to give you the opportunity to seek out the truth on your own. But what I'm wanting to get to is I'm getting those numbers together for the end of phase one. At least, I'll probably still keep it open, but phase one is now kind of coming to a close. I think I've got some satisfactory numbers. I do still need some help with the astrological stuff. So if you're willing to help with that, you can contact me. Reach out again, unintended.consequences3@gmail.com, and you don't have to be an expert, but if you have are fairly adept at doing that, I'd like to take a look at that. I'm also interested in those who want to do have a good handle on gematria, and if anybody's willing to take some time, maybe to do some tarot, just fast looks at different things and maybe groups of categories, because right now there's like 350 plus participants, so it's fairly time consuming. I can tell you that from my perspective, I put a lot of effort into it. But phase two is going to now include something a little bit more like a standardized test. I'm going to have some very specific questions. It's going to be worded a little bit like the Myers-Briggs test, and it'll be like, in these circumstances, would you say, agree, strongly agree, disagree, that sort of stuff. Some of these questions are going to include, for example, you were raised in a religious household, yes, no, very religious, not very religious, yes, but I left it, different things like that. I want to try to get a look at some of these aspects. I think I'm going to include blood type as part of it, and some experiences. I've had a number of people who indicated that they had past experience, for example, with night terrors or abduction stories. So I want to get a handle on that as best I can. So anything like that, these are going to be specific to phase two. We're going to try to nail these down a little bit more, as well as I've been categorizing, again, different high proximity, low emotional impact starting points and seeds that we can get people to look at, that should not trigger them, that they can begin to understand the nature of the deception and lies that have been foisted upon them by the powers that be. And this is a historical long-term plan. It's not something localized. It's not something recent. It is a very long-term plan since, as far as we can tell, throughout the ages. And certainly it appears that the entire history of mankind, the place we live, is misdescribed, and its history and who we are and what we are also seems to be certainly in question. So if we can get them to at least acknowledge those facts, then it makes sense to not trust those who are presenting us false and misleading information. And then once you begin to acknowledge that and can create a foundation of at least suspicion, right, in the powers that be, and that there might be something going on, and you realize the nature of the statistical probability of certain things happening based on foreknowledge that we can demonstrate, that they said these are the things we want to accomplish, and then those things occurred. It's a script. Are you going to deny it? Many people do, right? But when you can definitely prove unimpeachable evidence that these things occurred, but you got to plant that seed first. You got to get some suspicion and doubt in there. And once that chink in the armor begins, then you've got a better opportunity. So see a number of people, O+. It's very, very interesting. This is going to be a pretty remarkable. I agree, Allison. We are here for this, right? This is unprecedented. What's happening in the world is certainly unprecedented, it seems, and it does seem that it's a mad dash for the finish from both the controllers and those waking up. And again, I have long posited that in some ways they're making it a little bit easier. They're throwing out a bunch of breadcrumbs and as a litmus test to see who awakens and who does not, because it allows them to identify who we are, that we are going to be the divergent ones that they're going to have to look out for. Fine, right? They were going to anyway. It was always going to be that way. Don't let it scare you. I just live my life, again, with wisdom, with the understanding that everything I do is watched and surveilled. They know who I am. They know what I think. And basically that's a big middle finger. I do not consent, right? That's just how it is. I do not consent to your poppycock. So that having been said, anything that we can do to help, again, others wake up, I do not recommend, whatever works for you. Again, I'm just saying, I have seen people's attempt to flat smack and red pill people go awry. Often what happens is they just dig in their heels a little further. Just confirmation bias takes hold. They see you as being emotionally, kind of emotionally janked up, and it makes you look nuts, frankly. Sometimes like, don't be on my team. Come on, please, don't be on my team. Please don't do that, guys. But Again, I don't begrudge, anybody trying to wake other people up. I certainly understand the phenomena and the feeling, because especially those that you care about, you want them to be, not a zombie. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Please don't be a zombie. Don't be a zombie, Dad. You're getting nuts on me. So, yeah, your significant other or your family members. And certainly we're seeing an increase, at least I am, among those who wake up and those who don't, an increase in marital problems or relational problems. I can tell you with certainty that with some background in doing counseling, especially for those with anger management and substance abuse issues, that when they make progress, especially those who make really good progress, their relationships go to shit before they improve, because the dynamic of the situation, because you've got the three entities in a relationship. You got the one and the other, the two people, and then the relationship itself that has a dynamic. And when the one person changes, especially if they change dramatically in a short period of time, it upsets that dynamic, and the other person doesn't know where they stand, and so it complicates things. And then often there's a negative reaction and pushback, even if those changes are immensely positive. So things always get worse before they get better. So especially if you've got one person waking up and the other one's not, it's going to create conflict. There's going to cause friction. And so it requires a lot of grace and a lot of compassion and a lot of understanding and patience to get through that. So, speaking of I do not consent, a couple of things to note here as we round out the show is that, again, I've got some I do not consent stickers, which were provided to us. And so I'm happy to give those out for free. If you want to email me your mailing address to, again, unintended.consequences3@gmail.com. That's unintended.consequences3@gmail.com. The dot is important, by the way. So unintended.consequences3@gmail.com. Send me your mailing address, and I'm happy to send you a couple of these I do not consent stickers. No cost for that. Just happy to have you aboard. I am going to try to send some of them the old 2-cent trick, but I don't want people not to get their stuff. So the majority of them will probably be sent with the standard fee. Okay, so the Flat Earth meetup is canceled due to weather. Dang it. That's sad. I was actually hoping to maybe sneak down there, but hey, another time. But I know Ted Sommer is planning to depart the state after this weekend, so I'm sad to see him go, and the incredible vibe that he brought to the Pacific Northwest and his efforts. But I'm sure that he'll be happier than a pig in shit in North Carolina. Yes, we'll get together. Anyway, I do not consent to that. We also want to mention coming up on the 13th of June, that's my son's birthday, is Expose Bill Gates Day of action everywhere. So look for your local, I think you'll probably find a Facebook group, or you can find, if you just do the standard Consulting the Oracle, then you can find out where you can get together with other people and say, fuck you, Bill Gates. Fuck you, Bill and Linda Gates, if you will. So I encourage that. Again, I never encourage violence or anything like that, but it's certainly, I do not consent, and I don't mind telling the man, especially that man or whatever it is, that I don't consent to his bullshit. So we got that going for us, which is nice. So I think with that, I'll come back here and say, you got any questions in the chat? Any comments? Just one more thing. Again, I think next week, hopefully, I'll have some direction for you guys if you want to contribute to helping improve the podcast, or whatever we call this little gathering, by helping me more quickly get a new machine to make this better. I'll give you options on how to do that. So as I said previously, I'll provide a number of different ways. We won't just stick to one. Everybody seems to be have what they're comfortable with, and I don't want to not letting anybody do help. Again, I'm bad at e-begging. I'm not really begging, but people have asked if they can contribute, and I don't want to prevent that. So I'm not too proud to say, sure. I mean, help out. Again, I'm going to invest in it. It's not like I'm putting it all on you. It makes it happen faster. If people want to contribute, that's super great. And thereafter, I do want to try to get a camera, maybe a P900. Again, can be used. I don't care. I'm not big on. I'm not mad at my money. I never mind, scratch and ding or use stuff as long as it works. So anyway, with that, if you got any questions, don't fuck with Patreon. I've heard that, but again, it's an option for some people. I got to look a little bit more closely and just see if there's any other things last minute. But I started an account there. I've started a Venmo and PayPal and some other things already, just to kind of get it set up without pulling the trigger yet. We're just looking at the different Kickstarter type things. Probably not GoFundMe, per se, but something like that. So there'll be a variety of options. Again, if you're not comfortable with a certain platform, feel free. I mean, I'm not twisting anybody's arm. Again, I'm just thrilled that some people want to help. That's awesome. I mean, thank you. I'm just here again. I just wanted to help, and those of you who don't kind of know my background, basically, I got started communicating with Crow and Crow 777 and Jason Lindgren. Helped out on a couple of episodes of their show, providing some information. Became a regular kind of recurring guest there, and especially on the Secrets of Saturn Wednesday night stream with Wayne McCroy and Jason Lindgren. And when we began this project, the Awakening Project, came on the heels of some conversations that I'd had with them, and I wanted to contribute in that way, something that I knew that I could help out with in terms of understanding the metrics and some background that I had in data management and pattern recognition. And so to that end, we started, and then when I started reading all these stories and understanding what an amazing group of people were surrounding this community, and just I don't know any other way. You guys are like super people, man. I mean, the temerity that you have to stand up in the middle of what's going on and be as transparent and candid and just honest in the middle of where we are now in a post-truth world. It's fucking phenomenal. You guys rock, and I couldn't be more tickled to be just a member of this community, but to be able to contribute is probably more than I could have imagined even just a number of months ago. So I'm thrilled to be a part of it and to have you guys here with me, and so many of you so quickly. It's astounding to me. So with that, again, last minute, I'm an old fart too. I'm older than you, not Chiquita, I promise. Is there a group or page somewhere for this group? There sort of is, I suppose. You can find, I make, I'm on social media just a very little bit. So I do have a Facebook account, Tarjay Baldini, and a member of the group, both the Crow 777 official study group, but kind of a side group that somebody started there called Birds of a Feather. You can try to find that group. I'm sure anybody like Sue Finelli or Unintentionally Hip in the side chat can give you maybe directions there, maybe provide a link to that, guys, where I post from time to time. I don't check my messages there very often, unfortunately. So if you're trying to reach out that way, eventually I get to it, but it's not very fast. I'm not there very much I just anti-social media, right? But that's probably for now the best place. Maybe I'll make its own page, Unintended Consequences page there. I just don't spend a lot of time there. I mean, my time has really been taken up increasingly over the last few months. A request to appear on other people's shows, which I've been just thrilled with. Last Friday, I got asked and was just honored to appear on Iron Realm Media with Zach Zabala, Good Times for All, and Cammie Nodell, and those guys. It was just, we had a great, I was like 3.5 hours or some shit that we were just blah, 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 talking, and, Secrets of Saturn, I'm on there more often. And then I've started with Rose 777 doing the Poppycock Report Tuesdays and Thursday mornings at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, every Tuesday and Thursday morning. And I'm just pop in there for an hour and cover the poppycock in kind of a lighthearted way. So it's not as depressing as this show. Anyway, no, again, I don't want to be depressing or, make anybody freaked out or anything. That wasn't the intent of today's show. Just trying to look around the corner and going, and I didn't touch a bunch of things I wanted to touch on, but essentially you get the idea. I don't need to, I don't need to beat it to death. Is that our history is fucked up. Our future may be more fucked up. Just keep an eye on things, man, and make some plans. Even if you never use those plans, it's better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them and try to make decisions in the last moment and you don't know what the fuck to do, right? That's bad. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, guys, it's always a delight to be here with you. This has become the highlight of my week. Again, you can join myself and Rose 777 on her channel, Rose 777, same name, on Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, UTC -7, for the Poppycock Report. And she usually goes a little bit longer, but I'm there for an hour. I'm very tight with my time and try to keep my commitment. So I put in an hour there just to kind of lightheartedly cover goings on of the week. We look at the poppycock and just call poppycock bullshit. So we got that going. Also, Wayne McCroy of the Alchemical Tech Revolution channel, and he's got some books, and of course he's also on Secrets of Saturn. He and I are planning to start. We'll make an announcement coming soon. Every other Sunday, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, we're going to take a look at some comparative scripture and some stuff from different scriptural sources. For those who are interested in that, again, we have no intention of alienating those people who are not into that or don't want to hear it. Again, I understand, and I'm not big on, I'm not preachy at all. Just showing some stuff that we found there and we find interesting. And when you're looking for pattern development and pattern recognition, there's a lot of stuff there that seems to be corollary and interesting. There's a lot of wisdom there, we find, and certainly both Wayne and I will openly admit to having a direct relationship with our Creator, and we identify that as pretty much the same, at least to some degree, the same God that's described there. We all both agree that there's been a lot of weirdness in translation and adding and subtracting and that sort of stuff that make it a bit convoluted. But from my perspective, that whole thing is really just it's an open invitation to a love letter. And so even if people have gone in with an eraser or some whiteout, scribbled some things and added some false notes, ultimately, if you get to know the guy behind it, those things won't matter. You'll be able to discern what's what. And that's, again, it's just an invitation as far as I see. So anyway, so we got that going. Let's see what else. Did I miss anything else? Anyway, yeah, that's it. You guys are awesome. Oh, one more thing. I don't know if Joe Ray's still in the chat. So Joe, again, longtime friend of mine. We've known each other since we were kidlets, like seriously kidlets. He and I were songwriting partners. We were in bands together for a number of years, quite a long time, and primarily one central group with our best friend and songwriting partner, Jim. And unfortunately, been almost 25 years now that we lost Jim to depression. And so that's, we both, at least I did, certainly stop playing music at the time. I just lost the heart for it. We were doing pretty well, and we'd started off making some headway, and then that just ended. And so most of those, in fact, are some of the songs that you hear at the intro and outro and that sort of stuff are from that era. It was funny. My wife doesn't really listen to these shows because she always says, well, I heard you talking. I heard what you said. But she hadn't heard the intro or outro, and she heard the music intro, the music bed, and she goes, oh, well, it's distinctly, late 90s. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, it was actually the early 90s when Joe and I wrote that. So we were about 4 years ahead at the time. And she's like, how come we aren't rich? I'm like, yeah, I know, right? She's like, you should be able to do something. You cook and you do all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, well, it just didn't turn out that way. But anyway, I was like, yeah, it's decidedly dated. It sounds like the 90s because that's when it was written. In any case, I play a few of those songs. But Joe had, we haven't gotten to play for a while. I'm just going around in circles here. It's circumlocutions. So I hadn't had an instrument to play on in a while. A few months back, somebody was kind enough to help boost the little bit that I had saved. I had found a great deal on a replacement for the keyboard that I had to sell a number of years back. So I got a Kurzweil PC3, and when I got it home, it seemed fine. When I got it home, there were issues with it. The voices were dropping out, and the guy who sold it to me, he gave me all this information, a card, and a bill of sale, and all this stuff. And I tried. It was bogus, right? So I paid cash for something that was broken, and it just broke my heart. I'd put all my money in some other people's money, or somebody else's money, loaned me some money to get it, and it was just heartbreaking. I was like, oh fuck, right? So I haven't even had a chance to have it looked at or repaired. It's sitting around and I leaned up against the wall and it was just heartbreaking. I couldn't even bring myself to do it. You could play it for a little bit, but as soon as you had the sustain pedal down, the voices would add up and it would just drop out and go into digital hash. So I couldn't actually use it to play or record or anything. It was almost worse than not having it. So a couple of weeks ago, I managed to snag a really, really great deal on like a 20-year-old keyboard, a Yamaha S90. It's all right. It's pretty good. And I've only kind of taken just a few minutes to quickly go through the sound. So I told Joe that if he wanted to kind of hang out with me, I'd set up a live stream and just do like an unpacking, just go through some sounds and just noodle. Honestly, I haven't played or touched it. I haven't touched an instrument in 40 plus years, so it'll be rusty as fuck. Nothing to write home about, but people have asked if they want to, whatever. I'll probably do that late tomorrow afternoon, probably 6 to 7 o'clock, something like that. Maybe 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour of just noodling. I'm just going to run through some sounds and, blah, 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 play through it. But I'm doing that specifically for Joe. But it's going to go live. So if you see if you are subscribed and you get a reminder or a notification, that's what that's about. If you want to show up, fine, whatever. It's just going to be a little musical noodling. That's all. And rather embarrassing starts and stops. I'm not going to play any songs or anything. I'm just going to fuck around with the different sounds, see what we got, and what I was managed to get for a couple $100. So, but it's really, if this one works, and it's in pristine condition, it's probably not even 3 hours on it in terms of use. So it actually smells new. It's all the paperwork's there. It's just crazy. And it was a keyboard I liked back in the day. So now that I've got this, I can send the other one in, see if it can even be fixed, and we'll see what's up with that. So there you go. That's what's going on here, guys. Love to every one of you, and I so appreciate you being here. Just your presence makes it absolutely worthwhile for me to show up every week and spend the time with you, and also during the week. You guys are amazing and awesome, and I'm so appreciative for all of you. Until then, and I'll see you next week, if not sooner.